there were more than just Back to the Future. For popular culture, it marked a watershed moment. The renegade physician, the DeLorean time machine, and Marty McFly's legendary skating skills. It became an international phenomenon and is still aired on television decades after its initial airing. But there was a moment that people still talk about, and even the greatest had their flaws. Due to an unintentional blooper, not the story itself. It turns out there are quite a few. Accompany us as we investigate the hidden details and careless mistakes that almost went unreported. A film that leapt over the ages and into the past. It was 1985 when Back to the Future came out. This was no ordinary science fiction picture. Time travel was a part of it, but so were drama, humor, and love. Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale's film quickly became a smash hit, becoming one of the most successful films of the decade. Michael J. Fox played the lead role. Teenage Marty McFly accidentally travels through time. With the help of Doc Brown's, Christopher Lloyd, peculiar but lovable DeLorean time machine, he goes on a time travel adventure. Chaotropolis starts when Marty meets his young parents for the first time and inadvertently stops them from falling in love. Assuming he is unable to fix it, he may disappear permanently. It all started with the idea for Back to the Future in 1980. In the past, Gale and Zemeckis had worked together, but their projects had met with little success. They required this as their primary item. But first things first, nobody wants it. 40 or more studios turned it down. Why? It was excessively vulgar. There was a lot of adult humor going around during that time. There was less mess and greater enjoyment for all. Things changed once Zemeckis took over directing Romancing the Stone. Out of nowhere, Universal Pictures showed interest. Casting was a real pain as well. The squad had hoped Michael J. Fox would play Marty, but he was unavailable. As a result, Eric Stoltz found work. Zemeckis, however, realized a few weeks into filming that Stoltz wasn't very suitable for the part. He had the audacity to recast Fox. It was the correct call, even though it cost an extra $4 million to reshoot scenes. With Fox leading the way, everything clicked into place. After filming in California, the picture was wrapped in April 1985. The next step was a series of exciting test screenings. The release date was pushed back to July 3, perfectly timing it for summer, due to the overwhelming positive response from viewers. This led to a shortened editing timeline and the abandonment of certain special effects. But it didn't matter. It was a smashing success. With $381 million, it became 1985's highest-grossing film. The News and Huey Lewis's theme song, The Power of Love, also became popular, as fans and critics alike praised it. All these years later, Back to the Future is still a hit. The United States Library of Congress did indeed decide to preserve it in February 2007. It went beyond being a movie. Culture came to the fore at that moment. As is the case with many great films, the magic didn't just happen on set. Even more interesting was what went on behind the scenes. The face of Crispin Glover is familiar to you. Most viewers will recall George McFly, Marty's charming but clumsy dad. He was portrayed in the first film by Crispin Glover. When the sequel was released, though, something strange occurred. Despite Glover's absence, George McFly made an appearance. Just how? Rather than simply casting a new actor, the directors resorted to using a mold of Glover's face that had been made for the previous picture. Using it, they created prosthetics that actor Jeffrey Weissman wore on set. From a distance, it looked like Glover, but it wasn't. Furthermore, that became a serious problem. It was disappointing to Crispin Glover. It irked him not that another actor had portrayed the role. It bothered him that they had used his likeness and visage without his permission. Later on, he explained that if they had just hired a new actor, which is basically what I thought had happened, it would have been quite legal and I would have been totally fine with it. They used Glover's facial mold without his permission, so he sued. Subsequently, he initiated legal proceedings. The problem raised serious concerns about the use of an actor's likeness, but it was eventually resolved. This is of the utmost importance in light of the rise of deepfakes and AI. This wasn't your average domestic quarrel. It was a major event in Hollywood that changed how contracts were drafted and how faces were used. Michael J. Fox was forever learning and forgetting. Marty McFly was a tough nut to crack. Cool and funny weren't the only words to describe the character. On top of that, he possessed exceptional talent. In 3 films, Marty honed his skills as a rifle marksman, an Old West horseman, a stage guitarist, and a professional skateboarder. But this is something that a lot of people don't know. It is true that Michael J. Fox did acquire all of that knowledge. Fox took his duty very seriously. He preferred to be genuine. He aspired to give the impression that he was very competent in his profession. That necessitated gradually acquiring new skills. "I feel like I was in school all the time," remarked the man. "I felt like I was getting a lesson. Just one thing would I do. I might, for instance, acquire the skills necessary to ride a horse, shoot a rifle, skateboard, or play guitar. You can always find something." He finished by saying, "I learned about 1,000,000 different skills, and I've forgotten them all," while chuckling. It is an impactful quotation. His dedication and the haste of the shoot are both shown here. At one point, he was rehearsing a guitar solo. Mounted the very next moment. The movies would make you think otherwise, even if he may have long since forgotten those abilities. It seemed as though Marty could do it effortlessly, according to him. The blooper, the dancing, and the music might have slipped your mind. Among the most iconic scenes from the original film is when Marty plays Johnny B. Good at the school dance. Amid the hysteria from the audience, Marty loses it even more, crashing, jumping, and destroying the stage. I bet you didn't realize that Michael J. Fox meticulously studied the guitar solo. Many people love it. Even though he had been playing guitar since he was a youngster, this was a whole new level of difficulty. He aspired to always look his best. The soundtrack was already in the can. An instructor named Paul Hansen and Fox worked together. They gave the song a thorough analysis. When Fox played the music on screen, each finger movement would match the beat. Even with the help of a choreographer, he planned out the dance routine. He was able to pull off his aim of looking like classic rock icons. You can feel the scene's vitality at all times. Things get increasingly trickier from here on out. Later in the series, Marty interacts with himself in numerous incarnations across different time periods. Consequently, the camera ended up recording 2 separate Foxes in the same frame, who would often engage in conversation with each other. Filmmakers like Robert Zemeckis came up with a solution because regular cameras couldn't pull that off convincingly. A robotic, motion-controlled camera that could achieve perfect pictures, he asked ILM to build the Vistaglide. Zemeckis elaborated that we needed to come up with a system that would let me move the camera and crop 2 actors into one frame so that we could achieve these splits. The moments are still relevant now because of how popular it was. Having said that, not every circumstance was perfect even with so much planning. Only one uncut scene made it into the finished product. A small mistake, a blooper, it was. Yet, once you've discovered it, there's no turning it off. It's more exciting to learn that it passed editing. It doesn't matter how big the budget is or how competent the staff is, sometimes everyone misses the little things. On top of that, those little things often end up being the most beloved parts. However, while Back to the Future has many great lines, the one that bridges the past and present the best is the joke that uses the president as the punchline. Upon learning that Ronald Reagan is president in 1985 from Marty McFly, Doc Brown responds with astonishment. By the actor, he demands an answer. People who watch it now might think it's just a joke. At the same time, it was a clever allusion to Reagan's days in Hollywood. From the late 1930s until the early 1960s, he appeared in several films before entering politics. Although it would be reasonable to expect a politician to take offense at being lampooned in a film, Reagan actually thought the joke was funny. For some reason, he really enjoys it, so he asked the projectionist to play it back. He found it entertaining enough. Reagan also thought the whole film was entertaining. When he stated, "Where we're going, we don't need roads," in his 186th State of the Union speech, he really cited it. That was something Doc Brown said in the film. It is unusual for a president to make such a self-deprecating joke. It proved the film's maturation into an enjoyable and powerful medium. Other presidents were also citing it. Despite Reagan's enjoyment of the film's comedic elements, the actors and crew behind the scenes had to deal with some more serious moments when Marty was someone else. Michael J. Fox may be the most famous actor to play Marty McFly, but few realized that he wasn't the original choice. Fox was initially in the running, but Eric Stoltz was selected instead when his TV show Family Ties producers said he couldn't juggle both jobs. Even after Stoltz started filming with the team, she still felt off. Director Robert Zemeckis must have had other ideas for the role because he didn't seem to fit it. As they attempted to recover Fox, they continued firing at Stoltz. Fox couldn't contain her excitement at finally getting her hands on the screenplay. "I've never read a better script in my life," said he. He was willing to put in a lot of extra hours on set for the film despite the fact that it would conflict with his sitcom, all because he was enamored with the story. To everyone's surprise, Stoltz's work was spared from destruction. Even in the film, you can see traces of him. In the diner scene, Marty punches Biff, and everything appears off. Biff looks a little younger when the lights go off. Although he believes Eric Stoltz punched him in the cafe in the 1950s, Thomas F. Wilson, who portrayed Biff, even admitted as much. This is just a small detail, but it serves as a neat reminder of the film that almost was. Also, new skills weren't limited to Eric Stoltz. Some of the actors even managed to pull off impressive stunt doubles. A kiss, some horseback riding, and a crash course in safety. The third installment of Back to the Future takes place in the Wild West, where the protagonists go on a quest. The film breathed new life into the story with its use of horses, old towns, and Western conflicts. In this trilogy installment, Thomas F. Wilson played the role of Buford Mad Dog Tannen, a rough cowboy who was Biff's ancestor. He was more than a character, he was the character. Actually, Wilson mastered the art of horseback riding and lasso throwing on his own. According to writer Bob Gale, Tom Wilson spent a lot of time practicing riding and throwing the lariat. It is being done by him. The thrill of the action scenes is amplified because he is the one really performing them. However, that is not the last surprise. Even Christopher Lloyd, who played Von Brown, had a major scene in the third installment. On this occasion, he received greater consideration than Marty. Doc was previously considered a mad genius by us. On the other hand, a kinder aspect was shown in this film. He falls in love with Clara, a kind-hearted teacher. Not only is their kiss a sweet moment in the story, but it is also Christopher Lloyd's first kiss in front of the camera. Yes, precisely. According to Bob Gale, never before had an on-screen kiss in a film. Doc Brown's character gained further depth as a result. The developers choose to investigate Marty's universe this time around rather than limiting themselves to Marty's. Not every scene was perfectly sweet or even-handed, but the unexpected love story they gave us was effective. Some people built up the tension behind the scenes. When the dog disappeared, tensions flared up. The time travel experiment relied heavily on Einstein, Doc Brown's dog. What the general public saw as an intriguing experiment had a quite different impression on the test subjects. When Einstein disappeared after getting into the DeLorean, many bystanders thought the dog had been murdered. They had no idea it was a time machine and hadn't seen any teasers or ads for it yet. There was an uncomfortable quiet, according to Bob Gale, because the audience thought we killed that dog. It shows how ignorant they were before watching the film and how powerful the opening sections were. It was a relief for viewers when they saw that Einstein had only gone through time and was totally okay. Still, it's a good reminder that first-time stories can often be the most surprising. The script, however, omitted some surprises. Conflicts that arose during filming contributed to some of these. Crispin Glover was notoriously vocal about his views on how George McFly should behave in the role. Director Robert Zemeckis was opposed to his usage of a broomstick in a sequence he had ordered. The brawl got so out of hand that the other performers ran for their dressing rooms. Michael J. Fox recalled that he and Chris Lloyd both poked their heads out of the dressing room. It was clear that Glover was passionate about the job, even though it caused conflicts. We looked at each other and thought, thank God, that had nothing to do with us. There was a lot of heart and soul put into making this film, and these scenes show it. The authenticity of each scene, detail, and behind-the-scenes moment contributed to Back to the Future's enduring relevance. A near miss, some strange choices, and some missed chances. Stepping back into the future. The second half picks up right where the first one ended. It is necessary to travel into the future, Doc tells Marty and his girlfriend, if they want to provide for their children. However, that is not the end of the time travel. Last but not least, Marty goes on a time travel to the 1950s to stop Biff from giving his younger self a sports almanac. Because of the book, he could change the past and future to his heart's content and win bets. But it wasn't the original plan for the sequel. Bob Gale, the screenplay's author, claims that the original intention was to set it in the 1960s. We had them going to 1967 or 68, he asserted. In prison, Lorraine does her time for being a flower child. We were under the impression that seeing Doc Brown light up would be funny, but director Robert Zemeckis had other ideas. I don't see the point in going somewhere new when you can just go back to the first picture. In this way, viewers may observe the unfolding events from a new angle. The second film's innovative repurposing of the first scenes created something wholly new since it had never been done before. The ending of the first film, though, did not sit well with everyone. Crispin Glover had some issues with the film's material when playing George, Marty's father. By the conclusion of the first film, Marty has transformed into a better version of himself. There is greater wealth in his family. His parents are happier, and the car is better too. Glover found that offensive. Speaking to director Robert Zemeckis, he expressed his disapproval of the idea of financial compensation for his characters. Love should be the prize. He felt the film was trying to say that money buys happiness, something he strongly disagreed with. Part 2 didn't have Glover back because of this argument. One more thing, compared to stars like Thomas F. Wilson and Leah Thompson, he was paid a pittance. According to Glover, it was just unfair. Despite his wish to return, he was unable to due to the financial imbalance and creative differences. Some performers, though, required persuasion before they would agree, and others just bolted. Clara, Doc Brown's love interest in the third film, was played by Mary Steenburgen. Warmth and kindness were poured into the part by her. Bob Gale claims that Mary was hesitant at first, but her kids begged her to do it after seeing the first two movies and loving them. Gale elaborated that her kids had actually responded, "Oh, Mom. She could be in a futuristic movie." After speaking with the staff, Steenburgen decided to take the job. Her chemistry with Christopher Lloyd made the love tale feel real, even though filming wasn't always easy. One possible outcome has the psychotic dog Tannen hanging Marty. It was all in good fun, just a stunt gone wrong. According to Michael J. Fox's book Lucky Man, he went swinging unconscious for a few seconds at the end of the rope when it started cutting off his air supply. He was lucky that the crew found it in time. He didn't sustain any serious injuries. Though it was a terrifying moment, it wasn't just the camera that had near misses. The casting decisions themselves were fraught with major what-ifs. Mistakes with the doctor were almost inevitable. Although other actors were considered for the part, Christopher Lloyd's depiction as Doc Brown brought him fame. Another famous actor, Jeff Goldblum, was almost cast, according to author Bob Gale. Jeff Goldblum was the sole other contender we seriously considered for the role of Doc Brown, according to Gale. John Lithgow was also brought up, and Gale remembered meeting Goldblum. Lloyd was the one they picked, and his performance left an indelible mark. Despite the outstanding cast, there was one sequence that needed some work. A handful of outtakes were still included in the final version. Worst mistake ever, Marty uses a video clip from 1985 to supplement the 1955 documentary. The doctor comments, "Never mind that now," in the video. That isn't important at the moment. But when Marty was filming it earlier, the camera was laying at his side and wasn't recording. But when we watch the film again, that exact line is there. The part where the clock tower comes to life is also marred by an error. As he walks around the curve, the same individual can be seen in the background twice, both times traveling in the same direction. The inaccuracy is small, yet it was seen by those with good eyes. After that, the actual flyer. When Marty presents it to Doc, it looks wrinkled sometimes and brand new other times. From one image to the next, the flyer takes on different looks. Another hilarious blunder occurs during the video recording scene. In the original audio, Marty starts talking about plutonium just after Doc says 1.21 gigawatts. The doctor from 1955 watches the video, but the one in the clip is still talking. My words have been uttered. Is Doc's reaction from the year 1955? I am completely mistaken about the timing. Even the pamphlet the woman gives Marty regarding rescuing the clock tower has an oddity that, upon closer inspection, becomes apparent. Jennifer adds a note to the back of the flyer later on in the movie. Unfortunately, Marty doesn't see the text until after he receives the flyer. These minor mistakes don't ruin the movie, but they're fun to spot once you get the hang of it. As a result, we can see that even the best films have their share of charming imperfections. Consistency errors, background extras, repeating acts, and elements that change between shots are minor characteristics that show that no movie is perfect. But sometimes those imperfections only add to the charm. Reason being, the magic that powers it is still conjured by humans. Continuing mistakes in factual reporting. One of the first scenes of Back to the Future shows Marty getting ready to play guitar with Doc's massive amplifier. Before plugging in the instrument, he threads the cable into the amplifier and cranks up every knob to full. Every guitarist knows that the moment the cable touched the guitar, it would have caused a tremendous explosion. The amplifier ought to have blown at that precise moment. In order to sidestep this problem, guitarists in the film do it backwards, after plugging in both ends of the guitar cable, rather than the other way around. Doc makes a second error when he attempts to view the birth of Christ in December 2000 through the time machine. One thing to keep in mind is that historians agree that Jesus' birth was actually about 4 or 6 BC, not in the year 0. Secondly, there is no year 0 in the calendar system. It skips over a year, from BC to AD, and the DeLorean would have landed in California instead of near Bethlehem, even if the year were accurate. But later on, Robert Zemeckis clarified that he had joked about it. However, upon more reflection, the line loses much of its logic. Another example would be when Doc loaded the DeLorean with plutonium. To do this, he uses a glass tube containing a red liquid. Plutonium is actually a silvery gray metal. That liquid isn't even remotely red. Plutonium in its purest form disintegrates into brown or black flakes when exposed to air. Even with a simple TV reference, there is a factual issue. Marty tells someone in 1955 that he watched the Honeymooners episode The Man from Space on November 5. But it wasn't when the show really aired. Actually, December was the airing month. On November 5, there was an episode called The Sleepwalker that broadcast. One such peculiar instance is when Doc talks of going back in time to when Christ was born via the time circuits. Unless you count the year mistake, the DeLorean will never get from California to the Middle East, no matter how fast it goes. Having said that, the writing wasn't the only issue. There were also various visual effects and objects that showed more than the designers had intended, which led to noticeable mistakes. As the terrorists chase after Marty in the mall parking lot, we get a distant view of the DeLorean. Even if fans are aware of the driver at that exact moment, it may be Eric Stoltz. We filmed them before Michael J. Fox was cast. In order to get a better look at the driver's face, the original sequences were kept in the final edit due to the wide shots. Marty looks up Doc's address in a 1955 phone book in another scene, but there's an odd close shot of his hand turning the page. The hand is clearly that of an old guy with visible age spots, not Marty's teen hand. Doc uses a remote control to steer the DeLorean in the beginning of the film. But when I looked at the battery meter more closely, it read 0 volts. This means the device is indeed not working. It seems like Doc is using it to drive the car, though. Another blunder is made by Marty and Jennifer as they rush to school. Looking out the windows at the end of the corridor, it is clear that it is dark outside, even though it is supposed to be early morning. In the third film, the DeLorean is about to be struck by a bolt of lightning. A light will come on in the flux capacitor before the bolt can supply power to the car. The blue light is meant to signal that time travel is about to happen, even though it starts too early technically. These little things don't ruin the picture, but they show that even a hit like Back to the Future can have awkward parts. But when you look closely, you'll see that there are even more interesting stories hidden behind a few small background faults. Informational context that is inconsistent. At the beginning of the film, Biff is in the kitchen getting a beer. Light beer is all George has, and he hates it. On the other hand, 3 cans of Budweiser can be seen on the shelf of the refrigerator door if you look closely enough. That beer is certainly not on the mild side. Again, something strange happens when Marty wakes up in his bed in 1985. The yellow magazine RQ is following close behind. Reference Quarterly is an abbreviation for a journal written with librarians in mind. The producers admitted in the DVD extras that the set dresser messed up. No ordinary adolescent would have that in their bedroom. In a different scenario, Doc hands Marty a sketch of a flux capacitor, yet the label says flux compressor. The label is obviously wrong because that's not the name it's given in the novel. After George leaves the diner, another scene shows Marty going after him. Nonetheless, Marty is aware that Doc requires assistance and possesses his address prior to that. There is nothing that would motivate him to go after George. At this point in time, he and him do not feel particularly close emotionally. It would seem that his actions are solely dictated by the plot. As a result, the scenario feels forced, according to some fans. Marty finally gets Doc to tell him whether the vehicle runs on gasoline. According to Doc, plutonium, being more powerful, is required. Part 3 of Doc's story asserts, however, that regular gasoline powers the car and plutonium powers the flux capacitor. Fans who watch all 3 films with great attention to detail may find this confusing. Fans who have watched the trilogy multiple times will notice these subtle elements, but casual viewers might miss them. Even with his time travel abilities, DeLorean can't undo every error, as these events show us. In terms of time travel sequences, which one do you like, and why? Are any of these mistakes or oversights something you've noticed before? Do not forget to click the like button and share your thoughts in the comment area. By subscribing, you can stay tuned for more incredible stories from the fascinating history of Hollywood. After this,